Dr. Benjamin Benulis, welcome to the Urban Pharmacy Podcast. Thank you so much for being here.
Thanks for having me. Yeah.
All right, so we're going to dive into how to heal autoimmune issues today. But before we start, I absolutely want to know your journey. I want to know also how and why you got into practicing what you do and healing people, and how your own healing has folded into that. So take us back to where you started and whatever came first, your own health issues or healing people, and explain to us how this all started.
Sure. Well, yeah, it definitely started with my own health issues. I was, spent most of my life minding my own business, perfectly healthy, no problems. And then, and I was working as an engineer in the microchip industry. I had some interest in health and medicine. When I was younger, I was really into like science fiction and Dungeons and Dragons and things like that. And, I was like a math and science geek. And what I really wanted to do when I grew up, my ambition was to be a doctor that made bionic parts for people. Like I really wanted to be like, build, a bionic arm that could like, shoot laser beams and stuff like that. Like I thought that's like, and I grew up in the 80s and 90s and I thought, oh, by the time I'm, an adult, like that'll be a thing and I'll get to do that. And well, here we are. I'm in my early 40s and it's still not a thing. But that was kind of my ambition.
You have time. What? Okay, you have time. Don't worry.
Yeah. Although, I think that now I'm not so sure I'd want to do that. I'm having way more fun doing what I'm doing now. And I feel like I'm serving people at a higher level than I would be doing that. Mm-hmm. But anyway, that was just sort of something, a dream I had to set aside. Mm-hmm. And I took a job just working for a microchip company. And, I had an engineering background. And it was just sort of like what you do. And if you've ever seen the movie Office Space, I remember watching that movie in college before I got into the workforce and thinking, oh, wouldn't it be funny if working was like that, and ended up being exactly like that. So I was doing that, and it was cool, but it wasn't like super fulfilling, but I didn't really know what I wanted to do. Mm-hmm. But around 27, 28 started having health issues. And I was not really like a super health conscious person. Like I exercised or whatever, but I just figured like, oh, I've never been fat. I have good genes, but I started developing just like a bunch of chronic health conditions, and they started out kind of small, but like digestive issues, skin and eczema issues, fatigue issues. And then I started developing chronic pain issues, especially like muscle aches and things like that. And, it probably took the course of like, 2 to 3 years to really develop. And I would say there was about a 6-month period where it was starting to get really bad. Like it was really starting to interfere with my life. Every meal I ate was starting to cause like World War III in my stomach. I had no energy. I was knocking back 2 to 3 Monster Energy drinks a day just to get through the workday. The eczema on my hands was like all over my hands. It was really embarrassing. And I really started to just like tank in my performance at work and just overall in life. Like I was just not feeling good. Mm-hmm. And it really got to the point where like, it was interfering with my relationship. I didn't really want to have a social life. My performance at work was suffering. And I thought, okay, I got to do something about all of this. And so that's sort of when I finally thought, okay, maybe I should, go to the doctor. And thinking like, okay, I'll just show up with problems A, B, and C, and then they'll give me drugs X, Y, and Z, and I'll be cured and I'll be fixed and I'll go on with my life. And that was kind of my belief of, I thought, what would happen, right? But as we know, it's a much different story. It's okay, well, we can't really consider this any specific disease. We got to send you to different doctors to get more blood work and do more tests, because all these tests that we're doing are coming back normal and showing nothing's wrong with you. And then, so let's send you to the dermatologist for your skin and to the gastroenterologist for your stomach. And so pretty soon I'm going to a bunch of different doctors. They're all running labs and they're saying stuff like, well, it all looks normal. You're fine. Nothing's wrong with you. Or maybe take these over the counter drugs, or let's try this. And And so I had my faith in the medical system, and I said, okay, you know, I'll go along with it. Or they would pass me on to, oh, we got to send you to this other specialist, right?
Mm-hmm.
And pretty soon I'm like going to doctor's appointments as like a part-time job, which I didn't mind. You know, I thought I was going to get results, but after a few months of just getting passed around and everybody just kind of giving me the runaround and basically saying, we don't know what's wrong with you, or there is nothing wrong with you, I'm starting to get really, really frustrated and really upset. And just having worked in the corporate world, like you kind of get that runaround when people don't know what they're doing and they can't help you. And I was starting to get the sense that what was going on, was that none of these guys really had a clue. And it was really frustrating that they were basically all just reading off a script and didn't know how to help me. And so I really thought I was the only person at the time. I really thought, okay, this is just me. I'm going through something unique. I got to figure this out on my own. And so that's when I started looking into alternative and natural things, just because like I was getting no answers from medicine and I was just really determined to get better. And I really thought like, okay, most everybody else gets better, but I'm got to be the outlier. So that's when I started looking into like nutrition begrudgingly, because I was like, maybe something I'm eating could be why my stomach is hurting, even though the doctor said it's not. And he went to a lot of medical school to know that, right? So it was like some resistance, but I was at a point of desperation. I was like, I'll do anything to feel better. And so I read everywhere, and this was like 2010. I really had no knowledge of nutrition or anything like that. I was just like, I need to just not have my stomach hurt. And so I had been pretty much like a microwave food guy, like, just convenience foods. And I thought, okay, I don't really want to learn how to cook or do anything fancy, but I bet if I made I decided if I make smoothies, it's like a lazy thing I can do, because a blender is kind of like a microwave, right? Like you open it up, you throw the food inside, you close the door, you hit a button, and a minute later it's like, boom, there's your food.
Oh, I like that.
So
Yeah, that's a good analogy.
Yeah, that's literally was my reason for doing smoothies. I just wanted simple and easy and no effort. Because I was like not about to learn how to cook or make any fancy recipes or anything like that. And so that's what I did. I just took what I had in the fridge and just threw it in the blender and prayed like hell that it tasted good. And that's how I got started, really.
Wow.
And I noticed that I did feel better. Like my stomach didn't hurt most of the time when I drank this stuff. And so at some point I thought, well, maybe I should like learn some recipes, because some of these taste good and some of them don't. And I don't really know what I'm doing. And so I just remember like looking up smoothie recipe videos on YouTube. And that was like tripping and falling down the rabbit hole. Because that was when I got exposed to all these like raw food people that were, not only making smoothies, but they were talking about health in general and how like diet can heal all these chronic conditions. And I, initially I was like, okay, this is wild. Like these people are crazy. They're not doctors. They don't know what they're talking about. But it was like, I kind of needed the information, and I was there for just to learn how to make the smoothie and move on. But it sucked me in. And I noticed that the more I ate that way, the better I was feeling. And pretty soon, within a month or two, it was like I became obsessed because I started feeling better. And I noticed like I was just like, okay, well, I guess if the more fruits and vegetables I eat, the better I'm going to feel. So why not just turn the dial up to 10 here and just go for broke? And so I got really enthusiastic and just really, it became a hobby. And that's when all the other stuff they were talking about started to resonate with me, because I noticed not only that like my digestion got better, but my chronic fatigue, my chronic muscle pain went completely away. My fatigue turned into this like boundless energy where I didn't really need the energy drinks anymore. My mental clarity was like through the roof. I started like just having all this energy, all this like mental clarity. Work became way easier. Like I just became happier and so I got, just really excited and passionate about it. And that just kind of continued to the point where like, maybe a year or two into it, I was like, why am I still like working in a freaking cubicle every day? Like this is not,
there's more to life.
Yeah. And when I just noticed like on this journey, like a lot of other people were struggling, right? Like I was not the only one as I dove into this, like, because I had a lot of these autoimmune conditions, they're invisible, right? Like you can't look at someone and know like, oh, that person has ulcerative colitis. Every time they poop, blood comes out. Like you don't know by looking at them. Right. And so I realized there was a lot of people out there suffering in silence, and there's a lot of people that medicine couldn't help. And I realized like, a lot of these doctors really didn't have a clue. And I bet I could do a better job if I just got some basic training of like, anatomy, physiology, pathology. Like I could crush it. And so I hit about age 30, and I was just, the whole thing made me reevaluate my life. And that's when I kind of set upon a quest to do this. So that was that was the genesis of it.
To do what? So what did you do? You went to school for chiropractic, right?
Yeah, well, I wanted to be a naturopathic doctor because I thought
Okay.
that would be like the best thing to do. But I was living in Texas where that's not licensed. Like you can't be
Mm,
uh, a
got it.
naturopathic doctor. And so I was like, okay, do I want to be a medical doctor? And I was like, I just don't want to invest all that time and money learning about drugs and surgeries that I know I don't want to use. And I just know the whole experience would just be a buzzkill being around people who are like just not thinking the way I am. So I said, okay, I'll go to chiropractic school, but I'll just come out and I'll just practice like a naturopath.
Yeah.
And that was kind of my game plan. And I guess, to some degree I do that, but I have my own style. I learned a lot of other things in chiropractic school that I'm really glad I went, and I'm really glad I did that path. But yeah, now my main focus is like educating people, inspiring people, teaching them how to heal their chronic diseases with diet and lifestyle. So
And what was your actual diagnosis autoimmune wise? Did you ever get
I
a
never
actual?
got a formal one.
Mm-hmm.
But I remember one time, this was maybe a year or two into practice. I had this, I had this email list and I would send things out from time to time. And I remember someone sent me an email and was like, "Hey, Dr. Ben, all this information's like well and good, but I have a really rare autoimmune disease. It's called myalgic encephalopathy. Do you think you can help me?" And I was like, "Oh, well, I'm thinking like probably, let me go and look that one up." And I
Mm-hmm.
went and looked up myalgic encephalopathy, and it was like bullet by bullet, like exactly what I had.
Oh, wow.
And I was like, "Oh, that's wow, that's interesting." So I went back to the guy and I was like, "Yes, I think I can help you because I'm
Yeah.
pretty sure this is the condition that I had."
Mm-hmm.
So yeah, I never got a formal diagnosis, and honestly, I'm not a big fan of we can go into why, but like I think just like labeling people as having a disease, it really, labels disable, as they say, and then they just
Yeah.
go, "Well, I just have lupus, it's just the way it is, like I just got this rheumatoid arthritis, like I can't, my rheumatoid arthritis is really bad today," and they just take ownership of the disease, and it's a lot harder for them psychologically to overcome the barrier that like maybe you could not have it, you know.
Oh, I agree with that. That's something that I was diagnosed in air quotes with. I mean, whatever. I had the markers of acute hypothyroidism. I've listened to a lot of things that you experienced. I know that just now you reiterated them. Super chronic fatigue, joint pain, just like your body hurts. Now, of course, when you're eating terrible processed foods and inflammatory foods, that's going to be exacerbated. But even if you're eating like healthily, that can sometimes happen if you have these issues. But yeah, instead of me saying, oh, like I'm living with this for the rest of my life, it's going to be terrible. Like we're going to take a proactive approach and we're going to crush this and we're going to feel better. And I think that there's a huge mental component to diagnoses that people need to just be super aware of, and that they don't have to be the victim, and that they can be, they can take control of their health and take care of themselves in a really good way. So I've heard you say 1 in 7 people have an autoimmune issue. Is that correct?
That as of like maybe 2016, 2017, I think those were the numbers that I came up with. I'm not sure what it is now. I mean, I think if anything, it's more common than that.
Yeah. Yeah. So are you working with people one-on-one right now? Is that how you're treating people?
I'm working with people like sort of a one-on-one and group.
Mm-hmm,
So,
mm-hmm.
so yeah, I'm doing both depending on like what level of support people need. But yeah, I do have one-on-one clients.
And when you change your diet, so you stopped eating the microwave food and you started eating the smoothies, how fast did it help? How fast did you begin to heal and to feel better? Did you completely overhaul the entirety of your diet, or was it just like one meal a day, like that you were doing these smoothies? What did it look like?
Sure. I mean, it was definitely a gradual process in the beginning. It was just sort of like, let me experiment and try this. And I noticed the difference. And so I was really like, there's maybe like, maybe like a month or two where I was just sort of like dabbling.
Mm-hmm.
And then as I went further and further down the indoctrination of the YouTube rabbit hole and like learned more, I was just sort of like, wow, there's a potential that like if I really dive into this, that I can like really see like not just my digestion get better, but like I can, feel way better.
Mm-hmm.
So there was about a month or two where I was like dabbling with it and I noticed like I felt better, but overall I was still like not doing so hot, and I would still go and like eat, cheese pizza and things like this, and then feel it and be like, oh, and just kind of waffle back and forth. But I think there was maybe like, you know, maybe like I have a vague memory of exactly the time frame because it was a slow, gradual dip into it in like late 2010, but it was like early 2011 where I was like, it was kind of the new year, new thing. I was just like, you know what, I want to like really, I want to really go after this. Like, I want to like really give this a shot. And I would say, yeah, it was like around then. And I was like, okay, I'm committing to being completely plant-based.
Yeah.
Will it be all raw food? I'll do my best, And so I was eating like mostly raw, and I was doing the best that I could. Was it perfect? No, but I was really, you know, dialing in as best I could. And I would say within about 6 weeks of doing that, I just saw a massive shift, like massive. Like that's when I saw, I mean, I probably in those 6 weeks got 80% better.
And okay, so and I just want to, I want to tell you, I remember it was around 2010, like you're saying, that I started like coming across these YouTube raw people too. And I was like, God, these people are crazy. And now I'm literally like sprouting every day. Like, I mean, this is like my life. And it's just so hilarious to look back. That was like the time that I went plant-based. But I was still, I mean, I was cooking from, and no dogging on this, but like vegan cupcakes take over the world, and like vegan cookies in your cooking jar, and like all the vegan food, but it was like hydrogenated, whatever oil it was, and totally, sugar and all the things. I was still eating bleached flour. Did I feel better than the standard American diet that I was eating before? Yes, but like I thought that throwing in some sprouts and still eating those, those junk foods was going to do me good. But it's been such a journey. And now I'm like totally whole food, plant-based, SOS free, unless I'm out getting some vegan sushi somewhere. Like, anyways, it's been a journey. Are you, what was it for you that it was like a light switch maybe? Why was it plant-based that you thought was the answer for you?
I remember like it was around that time, like the documentary Forks Over Knives.
Forks Over Knives.
Yeah, and that was a big inspiration for me also, because I saw that movie, and what was really fascinating was they had people in there that were doctors that would like, oh, someone came to them and had diabetes or some kind of chronic health condition. They'd be like, okay, well, let's take you to the grocery store and let's get the groceries, and then let's take you back to your house and let's show you how to make everything. And I'm just like, wait, that's a job you can have? Like, that's a thing you can do as a doctor? Like, that's an option? You don't have to like cut people's organs out? Like, well, like I want to do that. Screw bionic parts. I'll do this,
Yes. So good. Yeah, my whole journey started with a documentary too, but it was like factory farm. It was just terrible. So anyways, but okay. So you went plant-based. Now you eat the majority of raw, right? Like mostly, are you mostly raw at this point in your life?
Yeah.
Yeah. And you're raw and you're thriving. So for people that are struggling with autoimmune issues or just inflammation in general, because I think that this lifestyle is conducive to both, and to just literally the whole population. But what are the first steps? Do you think that it's important to go raw? Do you think that raw is the most important thing? And if so, why? Or do you think it's mostly just transitioning away from the standard American diet and getting on whole plants?
That's a good question, right? Because I think there's many ways, perspectives on it. I think that to get started, you don't want to like bite off more than you can chew. Maybe it's a bad euphemism, but like don't overcommit to something you can't sustain and then fail at it and think you suck and you know give up, right? And I really try to have people focus more on like inclusion than exclusion. So it's like I don't want people taking on the label of like I'm plant-based or I'm vegan unless they really want to.
Yeah.
Because it's like I really am not a fan of labels. So I think it's like, you know, get as much raw food in as you can, do it in ways that are easy to do. I think that's one of the beauties of smoothies, especially like green smoothies. It's just like it's like it doesn't require like any kind of like complex culinary skill set, you know? And it's literally like put stuff in a blender and then, you know, pour it into a jar, take that jar to work and drink it at work instead of, you know, going and like hitting the vending machine, getting Cheetos, you know?
Right.
So I think, yeah, including as much raw foods as possible, but I don't think it's wise to like limit yourself to, I'm just going to do raw foods. If you're having trouble sticking to it, I would say like, just, you know, include as much, you know, include plant foods, include as much of that raw as possible. I would say don't try to take on any labels in the beginning. Just focus on getting more in of the good stuff. Not so worried about like, I can't eat this or I shouldn't eat that or it's bad because I ate this. It's like that'll just mess with your head. It's just like get in as much of the good stuff as you can, and naturally you'll kind of crowd out the processed foods and the animal foods and stuff like that. And that's why I call my book like Create Health, right? And not Fight Disease, because it's just like inclusion of the good stuff and do more of that and focus on what works instead of focusing on like all the things that I quote unquote can't have.
And okay, so I wanted to ask you about some specific foods, but I don't want to lose this question.
Sure.
What do you think outside of diet is wreaking havoc on our bodies? And feel free to just feel free to let me know what you think that people, specifically people perhaps with autoimmune issues, should avoid. If you have any insight on that in terms of lifestyle, environment, things that we're putting in or on our body.
I think there's a lot of things. And so I can give you some answers, but what I don't want to do is turn anybody into a hypochondriac. So I'll just preface this by saying like, you know, mitigate these things to the best of your ability, and realize that they do contribute to disease. They do contribute to toxicity, but like, you know, unless you're moving to like a remote forest in the, you know, rainforest, it's like, there's no way you're going to escape all of them 100%.
Yeah.
But I would say, you know, I think the big one that I see the most, especially for people with autoimmune disease, is like lots of stress and not sleeping enough. Is probably the biggest one, because sleep and rest is really where your body gets its opportunity to repair itself and heal itself. And so if you're eating the perfect diet and you're only sleeping 4 to 6 hours a night and you're stressed out, like body's gonna have a hard time healing. You know, it's gonna have a hard time healing. So that's probably like the number one area where people can, you know, see the most bang for their buck by investing their energy and trying to do that. Obviously, like household products with lots of synthetic chemicals, the body is going to have to detoxify those out of its system. So if you're, you know, spraying, you know, synthetic chemicals to clean things and like things that have heavy scents, these are all toxic to the body. That's one more thing it's got to fight off.
Right.
And you're giving it more things to fight off. That's work it can't put into healing you. So switching to natural products, and that includes like cleaning products, your soap and shampoo. If you use cosmetics, obviously, if those are synthetic, that's going to be more toxicity for your body. I think those are the main ones. And then obviously like exposure to, EMFs, wireless radiation. So like, with your Wi-Fi, you want to turn it off at night when you're not using it. With your cell phone, you want to, turn it off, put on airplane mode when you're not using it. Try not to be on it 24/7. Try to limit your exposure on that. That's really good. There are some more, but I would say those are probably like the highest leverage things that if you want to make changes on, you'll see an improvement in your life with for sure.
Yeah. And I think I told you before we got on this that I didn't want to talk about vaccines, but I want to ask you about that. Like, do you think that it's smart for people with autoimmune disease, or if they've been diagnosed with something similar to that, to be cautious about that?
Oh yeah, absolutely. I mean, they're a contraindication for almost every vaccine. And like, I know a medical doctor who will, like anybody who has a autoimmune condition, she will write them an exemption for them. Like no question. Like, oh, you got autoimmune. It's definitely an issue. And, and can I speak a little bit to like why and what's going on?
Yeah. Yep.
So we know with pharmaceutical drugs that they have side effects, right?
Yep.
Like, if you take beta blockers, you're going to feel tired. Okay. If you take metformin for your diabetes, your digestion is going to be all messed up. These drugs just have a consequence. A side effect is just a consequence of what they do. Because they are made to interfere with the part of your body that creates a symptom. They want to block that part of the body from creating a symptom, and therefore you feel like you don't have the disease, but you never treated the root cause, so you do. Well, drugs have side effects. You watch any pharmaceutical commercial, like half the commercial is the side effects.
Right.
And so with a vaccine, you're trying to essentially modulate the immune system. You're trying to stimulate it. You're trying to modify it to do something. Okay, but here's the thing: is that drugs have side effects. They don't always do what they're supposed to do, or they don't always do only what they're supposed to do. So while a drug may or may not confer some degree of immunity, you're toying with the immune system, and you're going to have side effects. And sometimes you're going to cause the immune system. You may cause it to be immune to some specific pathogen, but then you also may cause it to have side effects and go after things it's not supposed to go after, like your thyroid, like your joints. Okay. And so autoimmune diseases can be, and this is demonstrated in the scientific literature, a side effect sometimes from these drugs. You can, and I've got stuff about it in my book. The evidence is out there. This is something that I was just like digging around, trying to find like what's the cause of autoimmune disease. And I kept bumping up against this kind of unpleasant fact. And eventually, it was like, this can't be true in the beginning, but kept bumping into it, reading the scientific literature. And now I'm pretty sure there's a causal relationship.
Yeah. Yeah. Thank you for that. Let's go back to food. I want to ask you, I feel like you eat super simplistically, like a variety of plants, lots of juicy, like antioxidant rich, hydrating fruits, which I find my clients are having like massive success with. Like, that's what I always get them on, even if they're already eating whole plant foods, or even the majority of eating plant-based. Like, the more fruit, typically, the better success they're having with digestion, energy levels. I want to know about, are you consuming mushrooms? Do you promote that?
I don't to some degree, but I'm not like, hey, go get reishi and chaga and all that. Like, I haven't really delved much into that. So I'm kind of a neutral stance on mushrooms. Obviously, it's a plant-based diet. Mushrooms is a fungus. I'm not saying no fungus, right? But like, yeah, I'm not going out of my way to consume mushrooms. And there are probably like good properties to those like medicinal mushrooms, but that's not something I have too much knowledge on.
Okay.
So but I'm
And
not opposed to it.
are you sprouting? Are you like a sprout fan? Do you do microgreens or sprouts, or you just like stick with the simple?
I've been meaning to get into that. That's like a kind of a new frontier I want to pursue.
Mm.
And I met, Nate Maris
Oh yeah.
and his wife, and they're really big into it. And he kind of showed me his whole setup, and I said, okay, I'm gonna learn this. I'm gonna get into this. And then I never did, but I tasted what he was growing, and it was just amazing.
Oh,
So
you have to.
yeah, yeah.
You have to get in on this. You've got to do the sprouts at least, because then you don't have to have the lights, you don't even have to have the medium to grow the seeds in. And I honestly, Ben, I just want you to know, I think that your life could completely change if you start sprouting onions, because I don't think that like it, you will just be like blown away by the flavor. And Lissa and I kind of geek out about it, Nate's wife, about how good onion sprouts are. They're just like mind
Oh,
blowing.
I had them from him. Broccoli sprouts and onion sprouts were like, then amaranth was another one that was like,
So
whoa.
beautiful, right? Like
Yeah.
so pretty and just like antioxidant. I just feel like it just takes everything to the next level. So okay, there's your nudge to get on that. Make that like your holiday assignment.
Okay.
What about fermented foods? Are you eating fermented foods on a normal basis? What do you think about them for people with autoimmune issues? Do you have any insight on that?
Um, you know, I've kind of gone back and forth on that over the years. I used to be really against them. Now I'm
Mm-hmm.
thinking there may be some benefit. I mean, I think
Yeah.
overall, um, like if we're focusing on fruits and leafy greens, that's where we're gonna get like
Yeah.
the best bang for our buck. And so it's like we try to go with these like shortcut kind of like herbs and
Mm-hmm.
mushrooms and medicinal this and medicinal that. Like it's
Yeah.
cool, but I think the bulk of the results are going to come from just like, eating whole plant foods on a consistent basis.
Yeah. I love it. I love, I think that your approach is the smartest. And I think that you're right. Like people are always they're always looking for the capsules. They're always looking, like my clients are always like, what can I take for this and that? And you're the urban pharmacy. So what herbs can I take for this? And I'm like, well, before we even talk about that, let's just eat plants, like all whole plants, and then we'll talk. Then we can take it up a notch, but we can't be using these things and, like telling ourselves that if we eat fermented food plus the standard American diet, like that, we're going to be healthy. It's just like, it doesn't work that way. Um,
And I meet
so
lots of people that are approaching me and they're like, well, I'm taking my elderberry and my this and my that every day, and I'm drinking my celery juice. Why am I not getting better? And it's like,
yes,
okay, but like, what are you actually like eating for meals? Oh, let's not go into that, right? It's
right.
like, and so, everybody, it's like everybody wants to get on stage and, improvise and play jazz music like Miles Davis, but like you got to learn your like major and minor pentatonic scales before you just like go up on stage and just blast out, improvise blues. And
Right.
so a lot of people want to skip that step and because they're in a hurry, and they just want the easy way. They want what's easy. And they're
Right.
used to this medical model of like, we'll just take a pill, right? Like I remember like when I was in chiropractic school, a guy came up to me and he's like, hey Ben, like I see you're eating like lots of pomegranates. I have high blood pressure, and like I've heard pomegranates are really good for that. And he's like, 50 pounds overweight. He's like, should I be having pomegranates for my high blood pressure? And I was like, dude, like any fruit will help with that. It's not they're not medicine. They're not pills. It's not a quid pro quo. Like
Right.
have the pomegranates for high blood pressure and the blueberries for your prostate and the strawberries for, your hair to look thicker. It's like it doesn't work that way. It's a symphony. It's not a one-to-one thing. And
Yeah.
that's just a model that people have been raised in and indoctrinated in. And it's really hard to get that to shift because it's
Mm-hmm.
just so deeply ingrained. They're thinking like, oh, okay, well, I'm not doing medicine anymore. Now I'm doing herbs. So what herb do I use for this? And do I use elderberry for this? And do I use mugwort for this? And it's like, it's the
Right.
same, you're applying the same principle that pharmaceuticals use, and you're gonna have a rough time getting anywhere doing that. So I 100% agree. Get the basics dialed
Yeah.
and learn your scales and like learn how to play like a D major scale. And then we'll talk about blues scales, maybe once you get that dialed.
Yeah, I love that. And it's funny, I love it that you've mentioned elderberry twice, and I have to laugh because my husband and I are actually in the elderberry business. Like, we sell produce at the farmers market, but part of our brand, our farm brand, is elderberry syrup as well, and elderberry DIY kits. So for those people that don't want to consume raw honey, they can make their own. But like, we've been selling it for years. But I have this thing inside of this, like, it's just like a heaviness. I'm like, this is not the miracle thing. Like, people need to start eating plants. So we partnered with Wes Gomez. He's a raw foodie. I don't know if you know who he is, but
Oh yeah, I know him. Yeah, yeah.
yeah, he made some commercials for us for our elderberry and our elderberry DIY kits so that we can have like, we're going to get a barcode on our labels so that people can get recipes to start eating whole plants. So if they want to continue consuming the elderberry, they can put the teaspoon in their smoothie bowl, right? Like, let's make a smoothie bowl and get them on the plants. So it's just funny that you mentioned that, because I agree. Like, I don't think that we need to be leaning in on these things as the cure-all at all. We need to just get more plants in our body. And before we wrap up, I kind of just want to ask you, we've been talking about raw, we've been talking about eating plants. Can you just let me know, for people that are dealing with autoimmune issues, why we would want to reduce or eliminate animal products, especially at every meal?
Sure. I mean, they're gonna be pro-inflammatory is the main thing. And so like, ultimately, like, they're gonna be difficult for your body to break down and process. They're gonna leave behind metabolic residues, metabolic waste. You know, your body can eat them, you can survive on them, but thriving on them is a different story. And so fruits and vegetables are going to leave behind the least amount of metabolic waste, the easiest on your body to digest and assimilate, and that frees up energy to your body to be able to use for healing.
Yeah. I've heard you reference like just that, like the more fruits that we can eat, the more energy our body can put toward healing. I'm literally reiterating what you just said. But if people can think about this, like, we need less acid to break down the fruits and veggies, right? Like, so we need our body, all of the systems, we need to think about what's easiest for our brain to use, right? The fruit, the sugar from the fruit, like, everything has to turn into that glucose. Like, what is going to be the easiest way for our body to absorb these through our gut, get into our bloodstream, and get into, our brain and help us thrive. So I love that. Okay, Ben, I asked this question to every guest, and I would love to know from you. What does holistic living mean to you?
That's a good question, because I feel like it means something different to everybody. But I guess holistic living would be living in such a way that like taxes the body the least. So, consuming the foods that tax the body the least, using the products that consume the body the least, and using the least amount of products, and just generally living in harmony with nature the best you can within the context of, living in the 21st century.
Yeah, I love that. Is there anything that you want to add before we close this conversation? Anything?
Sure. I mentioned my book briefly, but I'll just plug it again. So I have this book. It's called Create Health, Reverse Autoimmune Disease Without Their Side Effects. You can pick it up on Amazon. You can also get it on my website, createhealthbook.com. And if you get it on my website, I throw in some free goodies as well. So check that out. And then, if you want to learn more, you have questions, you need any help, you can always hit me up. Instagram's probably the best way to get a hold of me, and I'm just my name on there. And thankfully, I'm no longer shadow banned. So if you look me up, you can actually find me. So,
well, sometimes when you're a lifestyle medicine practitioner, and you say, you're disrupting some industries, you might get banned. So go follow Dr. Ben on Instagram. I'll definitely put the link to do that in the show notes. And I appreciate you. Thank you so much for being on, and thank you for sharing your message and doing the work that you do.
Thanks for having me, Stacey, and keep up the great work that you're doing too.
Thank you so much. Be well, Ben. Take care.